everyone, welcome to Zoned Canada. I'm your host, Jesse Betteridge. Joining me today for the first time is my good friend. She's from the Anna Twitter sphere. You may know her on there as Kitty Cat Star Gal. She's also done a bit of work on visual novels, with writing some that have come out in the past few years. It's Sarah. Sarah, thanks for coming on today.
Thanks for having me.
So, full disclosure, this episode, which is, was a little late, I'm aware. It was originally supposed to be about a new channel that's going to be launching in Canada soon called WOW TV. So if you haven't heard about it, WOW TV is being launched by WOW Unlimited, which is sort of a conglomeration, partially owned by Cartoon Brew and Chernin Group, and it's kind of tangled up with all the Verve properties in some way. And also the channel is also being launched in collaboration with Bell. It's a youth channel, which actually marks the first time that Bell has really tried launching a youth channel, and it's actually going to be taking the place of the Comedy Gold network. And the approval for that changeover was just approved by the CRTC. So the reason why this is probably worth discussing is because the vice president of WOW TV has been very clear publicly on Twitter for a while that they are interested in airing anime on this station. Which is likely going to be a big deal. This show, when we started this show, we talked a lot about the TV ecosystem in Canada, how it's changed and what the future might be, and there's a lot to say about that as well, especially with the way that WOW TV fits into that whole picture. And I really want to get into it, but unfortunately I have to restrain myself a little bit because WOW TV has still not made any programming announcements, and I just know that if I record an episode about WOW TV, we're going to do a whole bunch of speculation in that episode, and then while I'm editing it, they're going to release their actual programming announcements, and it's going to contradict everything we say, and I just want to avoid a mess like that. So we're going to show a little restraint, or I'm going to show a little restraint and hold off on doing an actual WOW TV episode. Another reason the episode got delayed was because of Anime Revolution in Vancouver, which was a couple of weeks ago. I did 4 panels, and that just completely consumed my life for quite a while, and it kind of left me with no time to actually throw together an episode, which I intended to do. And we're going to talk a little about that convention right now. So Sarah, this was the first time you had been to Anime Revolution this year. And I think I know you were at SakuraCon earlier this year as well. How did you find it overall?
I lived in Vancouver before, and every year I remember seeing people dressing up, and I was just like, oh, there's a con here, and never really thought about it. But my first time here, I was actually pretty impressed. Usually I've been to small college conventions here. But no, I really liked it. The venue was gorgeous. Between all the good food, of course, it's Vancouver. Please visit. I really liked it. I thought it was pretty well organized. I heard there was issues last year. So, this year I only stood in line for the pre-pickup badge for no more than an hour. And I heard that was probably the worst part of it.
Yeah, last year the line was the big looming issue for that convention. It was completely out of control. They didn't have enough people managing it. They let the pre-reg and reg lines merge together, and it just created this giant disaster, and so many people were waiting in line all day on Friday. But they were on top of things, and they got that completely fixed this time, which was great to see. Every time I checked in this time, the pre-reg line was always shorter than the registration line, which is a very good sign that you're handling that well. And I think 1 to 2 hour wait time, that's perfectly reasonable wait time for a con this size. And they also, last year, they tried to institute this ultraviolet stamp that they would check on your arm, or at entrances on occasion, and it usually just wound up being a giant mess. They did still have the stamp this year, but it didn't actually wind up enforcing it, which was a very good idea, because it was a huge waste of time, and I hope they realized that.
Yeah, that was my first time getting stamped. Usually I'm used to having your badge scanned or checked. They even I think they just wrote your name on a Sharpie. So I was really wondering how they're going to check badges.
I was surprised. Apparently they do that at Otakon too. They just write your name on a Sharpie on a badge. I'm sure they have some other security measure in place as well, though. I don't know what, though. But AR may be the only con that has tried the UV stamp thing. Maybe they need to look into measures that other conventions have already tried rather than trying to reinvent the wheel.
Yeah, definitely. Like, especially for people that was like their first time, never really knew what the whole measurement was. Not only that, I was worried about it would get washed off like the day after.
Yeah, it does. And then they have to restamp you, and they have to check your ID, and it's the whole thing was not very well thought out. I'm glad they basically, if they didn't ditch it completely, I'm glad that they just kind of ignored it this time.
Yeah, aside from getting in after that, it was like really nice and easy. Like the panels are all laid out, very like easy to navigate. I really liked how they set up like the artist gallery, like just down there. Like it was just really like, I really liked it. I think the only downside was their, like, I think a lot of people mentioned it, like their downtime between panels, there wasn't much to do there. I think there was two rooms for, anime, being shown. And then there's a couple of like, I really like the Gunpla rooms, showing people how to like, get your Gunpla going.
Yeah. The having a Gunpla room was a good idea. I think Gunpla was actually there in an official capacity, which was nice. They had a pretty neat display going in the dealer's hall for that as well. But yeah, the big issue with this con again is like they don't really have stuff for downtime, and there was more interesting panels going on this time than compared to last year, for sure. They had, I think, about 20 more panels compared to last time within the same number of panel rooms and within the same amount of time. So the scheduling was much more efficient. They keep their gaming area in the dealer's hall, and in an effort to keep the gaming open later, that resulted in some weird hours. Like the dealer's hall didn't open until I think 1 on Friday, was it? Yeah, it was open until 8 p.m., which is not bad. It's unusual, but it's not a bad move. But it would be nice if they could get that gaming area somewhere where they could actually keep it open later hours without having to artificially extend the hours in the dealer's hall. Because, there should be other stuff to do outside of that area, too. Now, I know that they're limited with this Vancouver Convention Center, where they have it at. Like you said, it's a gorgeous venue. But it's also very, very expensive. The fact that they have been able to secure that venue for 2 years in a row is mighty impressive. And I think that's probably the upside of this being a for-profit convention, is that I don't think that a non-profit convention could have pulled that off. I mean, good for them in that regard. But I hope that they can secure more space in that convention hall at some point. I mean, it's a gorgeous venue. I'm glad they have what they do. But they need a little more space for stuff, especially, again, for downtime stuff. They only have, like you mentioned, they only have 2 screening rooms. They were much better laid out this year than they were last year, and programming choices seemed a little more, they seemed a little random last year. This year they were focused more exclusively on current stuff, current Crunchyroll titles, which is not bad, but it doesn't lend itself to a lot of variety. But what they really need, they need like a karaoke room or a manga library, or even just another screening room that's showing more varied content, like old or weird stuff that people are less likely to have seen. They have to, even with their current space, they need to find a way to add one of those things, because they just don't have enough variety of activities to do when you're between panels or between events at the convention. And that's still kind of the big glaring thing I think they need to address.
Not only that, like, well, every year I see more families bringing their kids over. So I'm hoping like maybe there'll be more downtime for the kids, whether it's like watercolors or just something. Cause like that's what I like about it. I see like family and they're all cosplaying. It's really cute. And I'm really happy to see more family. Like I would love to see more family oriented activities. Like as much as I love like the 18 plus panels and all that stuff, there's so much of that stuff. Like we are not lacking in that department, but I would love more just some family oriented activities.
I could argue we could get better 18 plus content than we currently do.
Oh, that
too. But yeah, absolutely, and I think it's a problem with a lot of anime conventions is that they struggle with having something that's kind of exclusively for families or for kids. But yeah, having something like that would be a good idea for sure. And it always is surprising to see how many full families come to these cons a lot of the time. I think of all the local or like nearby conventions, I think Emerald City Comic Con is the only one I've seen that has really done a good job of having like kid-specific events going on at the con, as just sort of a side thing for downtime at that con. But yeah, that's definitely something that they could add, and I think would be a good addition.
Oh, what panels did you go to?
I still didn't go to too many panels. I mean, Jarvis Gray was there. He did a number of his usual panels, like awesome anime openings and when anime sells out. And I finally got to see his anime abominations panel, which is all about the worst 3D anime ever, which is a fantastic experience, and I'm glad I stayed at the convention till 11 for it, even though I actually had to miss Teddy Lloyd's set at the anime rave in order to see it, which kind of sucked, because it was kind of amazing that they managed to get Teddy Lloyd, and it was especially great after SakuraCon had gotten Teddy Lloyd, and he didn't wind up being able to come due to passport issues. I mean, that was a great get, but I skipped out to see Anime Abominations. I do not regret that choice. Although I did hear that Teddy Lloyd apparently did do a surprise set at the closing ceremonies, which I guess serves me right for never going to closing ceremonies at conventions.
We went to a celebration of Sailor Moon, like 25 years in the making.
Oh yeah. That was that was I'm glad that they showed some of the clips from the old live action Sailor Moon.
Mm.
Overall, not a great panel. I mean, it was supposed to be celebrating the 25th anniversary of Sailor Moon. The best way to do that is not spending 20 minutes talking about how the Deke dub is so much better than the Viz dub, which is how that panel started, and it wasn't a great way to kick things off, in my opinion.
I went to the history of mecha anime. I enjoyed it a lot, since most of the mecha I was familiar with was like, Gundam Wing, Gundam Seed. But, kind of went from Astro Boy. I think the most recent one I think they stopped around like 2002 though. They just said there was like nothing recent in the last decade where they felt like they could show that kind of reinvented mecha or added anything new to it. But, there's a lot of focus on like, Macross, of course, Mobile Suit Gundam, all that. I was kind of sad they didn't mention like some of the shoujo-ish stuff, like Escaflowne kind of got a mention. I really liked Ray Earth. I would kind of wish they had a little more focus on like oriented mecha, but it's always like a little black hole there. It's very skipped, and it's like not much there.
Well, I disagree with the point that nothing worthwhile has come since 2002. I mean, I know mecha as a genre is kind of dead, I guess. At least it's not like it was in like the 80s and 90s for sure. But there's stuff worth mentioning after that. I
think it's like they said they kind of stopped because they said like it's more focused on like the characters, the emotions, like that, and less about the robot itself, which, I could kind of see. I'm sure there'll be something else that'll come out. But no, I feel like there has been a lot of like, there's been a few like mecha that's been very enjoyable and worth mentioning. But yeah, I just feel like they couldn't cover anything beyond the early 2000s.
And you went to the Scripted Chaos as well, right? So let me just explain Scripted Chaos to people who are not familiar. This is a kind of unique event they do at Anime Revolution, and I like the idea behind it. It's a great concept. They get all their English language voice actors who are at the convention, and they provide them with scripts from different anime, and they get them to read from those scripts, but using the voices of different characters that they do in different shows. For instance, a couple years ago, they had Tony Oliver. They had him read from a script for Love Live as one of the girls, but in his voice for Lupin. And it was hilarious. As long as they have good voice actors and good content to work with, it's a very good panel. The problem was that they only had about a half hour's worth of content for these voice actors to work with, and then it just turned into Q&A after. And Sarah, I understand that this time it hasn't improved much.
No, the scripted, the two that I remember, they picked two scripts. One was for Batman versus Superman. I liked it because every sentence they stopped themselves. They're like, "What is this?" And they were very confused because none of them have watched the movies, and it was just a terrible script, and they just couldn't really comprehend what was going on. It's the Martha scene. Mm-hmm. So they had Clifford play the voice of Bakugo, and then I think Pro ZD was Superman with like a Japanese weeb voice, or they did some kind of nerd voice for him. So it was hilarious. But yeah,
one of his voices.
Yeah, definitely one of his. Yeah, as himself. After it was done, it took 10 minutes for everyone to go inside, so we started 10 minutes late, and then the Scripted Chaos itself was 20 minutes. And then right after that, they went straight to Q&A, and I felt really bad. I was the only one who got up and walked right out, but there could be good Q&A, but I find so many Q&As I've tended to, like there's always been like that one question that like just the whole room just cringes and everything goes quiet and you just wish you were not there because you feel like you're secondhand embarrassment for whoever asked that question.
Oh yeah. In my many years of doing panels, I have long since learned that Q&A is just a bad idea. And I no longer do it at any of my panels. It's better to prepare enough content to make you to actually fill out the full hour. Also, if people don't ask questions, the whole thing just falls flat, and it's just really awkward. As you said, ProZD was there, and that also caused another problem because any panel that had ProZD was impossible to get into, pretty much. In fact, you were very lucky to even get into that one.
I got into that one because I couldn't get into the Inuyasha one, and I was so spiteful. I went to the other long line and went, oh, I'm going to this one.
Yeah.
That was the only way I got to see that was the only way I got to see the Yuri on Ice cast at Anime Fest, which is pure spite of not getting into the autograph.
That was another thing, because I think many people for the scripted chaos, like, you waited like 2 hours to get into that scripted chaos as well, or something like that?
I think it hit the hour. I think 2 hours before, there was already people hovering and trying to figure out which line and when to start. But the hour before, people were already lined up, and then they had to, before they didn't cut any lines off, like with Inuyasha, they just let the line go as long as they can, and then they just stopped when they couldn't fill. I was like very close. Very, very close. So, with that one, what they did was I think they counted, and then they just cut the line up and said, okay, no more people after this. And then you had to be the sad line that told everyone you can't line here, you can't line here.
Yeah, I mean, at least they cut the line off. But,
yeah.
I mean, they really, next year they really need to institute a rule that you can only line up you have to wait before a certain time in order to line up for an event, because people shouldn't be waiting in line for 2 hours to get into one panel, especially when, there are already people waiting in line to get to the panel before the panel you're waiting for. That's kind of ridiculous. Also, I mean, I personally, I know ProZD is popular. I don't think I would have predicted that he would have caused as large sensation as he did at this convention. Yeah, they really should have put like Scripted Chaos and the stuff that he was in the main events theater instead of in just the little panel rooms, because then you would have actually been able to accommodate more of the people who wanted to come and see just him in these different panels that he was put into. And that brings up kind of another problem, is that the main events theater, it's just packed with all of these live stage show kind of events, and there's not a lot of variety going on in that room. I mean, if you go through the schedule, you'll see they have, like, the talent show, they have the walk-off, three walk-offs that consume 2 hours each day. They have, like, the kimono contest, they have the worst cosplay show, they have the idol show, and then they have the actual cosplay show, which was, like, tucked away at 5 p.m. on Sunday, which was kind of ridiculous. I mean, you don't need all of those. I think this con goes a little overboard with the live events. I think they need to reevaluate that and maybe cut a few, because they could really be using that main stage for some other things, like Scripted Chaos. Like they could retool that, maybe make it the actual Scripted Chaos part take up the whole hour instead of only 20 minutes of it, and put it in the main stage theater, because usually they're not always going to have ProZD, but they're usually going to have some popular voice actor guests in it. I mean, also it would be great if they like screened a movie or something in that main events theater. It really feels like when you're piling on all those like live performance things, it kind of results in the actual anime component of the event being pushed aside, which I know is not an unusual thing to happen at anime conventions, but it would be nice if they kind of shifted the focus in that room. I think it would help balance things out a little more.
Yeah, I think they definitely weren't prepared for that room and like all the lineups, because after that, yeah, it was just like really full.
I know that the Japanese voice actors, they had Kappe Yamaguchi this year. They had most, and Satsuki Yukino, and I don't remember the third one.
Hitomi. She did the voice of Nano and Bleach. I know she was in Bleach.
Yes, yeah. Anyway, they had Marina Inoue. They had Marina Inoue as well. I missed all of her stuff, but most of the Japanese voice actor Q&As they had were actually on Sunday, which I enjoyed, because it was easier to get into stuff on Sunday. And, you can just, it was kind of a good way to spend the last day of the con, just kind of laying back and watching Japanese voice actors kind of do their thing. I mean, Q&A isn't always the best avenue for enjoying voice actor guests, but people like Kappa Yamaguchi are always entertaining to watch, no matter what they're doing. And of course, their autograph lines were always insane for those guests as well.
Yeah, I think there was that, and then right next to the lineups were the on stage performances, and then right next to that was the gaming room, and then right next to that was the maid cafe.
Oh yeah. Let's talk a little about the vendors hall. I will say it was much more organized than it was last year, and also there was no weird smell. Even though I think I'm the only person who noticed that weird smell last year, but I swear there was a weird smell in there. But yeah, there was nothing like that this year. It was more clearly laid out. I'm glad they're filling that space, but they did have a quote-unquote panel room in the dealer's hall. That's kind of where they put all those amateur idol performances that kind of permeate this convention in a lot of ways. Probably not a lot of people appreciated having non-stop idol performances going on in there, but as a panelist, I'm happy that they kind of put those in there rather than having those groups eat up panel time. Which they did last year. There were each of those groups each got their own panel last time, and it just ate up space that could have gone to actual panelists. So I'm kind of glad they did it that way. But cramming all that stuff into the dealer's hall, they gotta, they gotta rethink it a little bit. I know they're lacking space in the convention center, but putting vendors and artists and autographs and maid cafe and idol performances all in one room, it's a little much.
Oh yeah, definitely. You could tell when he went by that very end, it was just really crowded. Usually for the idol performances, I think a lot of people went there to watch something or to rest. There was always a lot of open seating, which was nice. If I just needed to wait between 30 minutes, watch a couple of there's a rapping segment I remember that was kind of entertaining. Oh. Yeah, a lot of Love Live themed ones as well. But yeah, and watching that huge autograph line.
Yeah. Oh, and the gaming was in there as well. Yeah, so it's a little much. Also, I would say, I know I always go on about how there's so many bootlegs in the vendors hall at Anime Revolution. It was a little better this year than it was last year, but I think AR still really needs to crack down on the bootlegs. I find they're still a lot worse for that than other conventions are. There are specifically a couple of stores like the Pop-Up Shop, which is has this gigantic, very prominent section in the middle of the vendors hall that's they are 100% bootleg, and they absolutely need to crack down on that and do something about it, because it's very blatant and kind of out of control. I mean, I know AR's not the only convention that has a bunch of bootleg sellers in it, but yeah, I think they still need to do more to address that issue. But they did have Crunchyroll was actually there selling merch, which you don't typically see at Canadian conventions. Usually they don't manage to find a way to sell merch up here, but it seems they pulled it off this time. They didn't have any actual reps though, which was kind of disappointing. I know it's apparently becoming an uphill battle to get those companies to actually send reps and do panels and stuff at Canadian conventions, but I think, a little bit more of an effort could be done on both ends of the situation with that.
Yeah, it was just nice to actually see them. But yeah, if people were there, you'd show them the Crunchyroll app, and they would give you a free poster. And then the next day, I think every day they were selling something different or giving something away free. So it was a little different every day, which is kind of nice. It was to encourage you to come every day.
Yeah, they got some decent posters. They weren't selling any banana fish merchant. Or sorry, not banana fish, banana fish. They weren't selling any banana merchandise though, which is that's unfortunate. Or at least I didn't notice any.
No, there was none, sadly. But there was Megalobox, ReZero, Food Wars, and I think a couple of more recent ones. Oh, I did go to the Directing for Anime with Clifford Chapin panel.
Yeah, oh yeah, how was that?
There was no slides or PowerPoint or anything fancy. He just sort of sat there and talked about his directing anime and went into all the detail about why it takes so long for shows that look like they're done to come out on Blu-ray in English. Since when the Japanese release their Blu-rays, how they fix up little tidbits, fix up the animation, sound mixing. When they send the new stuff over, they have to kind of redo it again. They might change the mouth flaps, and they're oh, we have to redo this dialogue to make it match again. So that's why things do take longer, especially if they fixed like scenes or removed or added mouth flaps. So
Mm-hmm.
it's really interesting to hear. A lot of the people who were at his panel actually didn't know who he was. So after he kind of explained he was the voice of Bakugo and like he directed like Keijo and all that, everyone was, I think someone in the audience was like, oh, I never heard of you before, but now that you talked about your resume, you're a really cool guy. And he's just like, oh, thanks, dude. So
Man, I don't know if you want to just say that, but to be fair, I didn't really know who he was when he was announced as a guest either. But yeah, sometimes you just gotta emphasize what they've played in popular shows, and that's usually enough. And I think if there was one thing at this convention that just kind of made me raise my arms and say this is total bullshit, it was the fact that they did not have guidebook support this year. So I guess if you've never been to a convention before, you might not be familiar with Guidebook, but Guidebook is an app that lets you download an interactive schedule that's always live and being updated as things change at the con, as they always do. So it was fully expected. They had it last year. It was fully expected they'd have it again this year. But at the last minute, they said that due to the rising prices of Guidebook, we are not going to be using it this year. And that is complete crap, because every con uses Guidebook. ICON in Winnipeg, which was the weekend before, which is a convention half the size of Anime Revolution, had full Guidebook support. There is no excuse for Anime Revolution not having it. I mean, it wasn't really a huge deal. There weren't very many panel rooms at Anime Revolution. They only had 3 panel rooms, 2 screening rooms, and then the main events theater, and then a couple other things. So, it wasn't a lot to keep track of. And there actually weren't a lot of schedule changes. I think only a couple things wound up being canceled. I don't recall anything being rescheduled. But yeah, Guidebook support, come on guys, that is basic stuff. I'm sure any convention that is going to shell out for fancy plastic badges or actually provide lanyards that aren't from a sponsored group for everyone at the convention, or pay to have their own bags produced, or pay to have this phenomenal, beautiful, expensive venue, can shell out a little bit for Guidebook, even if the prices have gone up. I thought that was completely ridiculous. I hope they do something about that next year.
Yeah, because when you were in the lineup, you didn't even get your bag, so you got your badge. You're like, oh, come back tomorrow for your bag, which would have the guidebooks printed and some other stuff. And of course, a lot of the times you forgot to do that, or you just weren't able to get there, or you didn't know how to get it. So a lot of us just never even got our bag.
Yeah, that's true. For some reason, they weren't giving out the bags on the pre-reg day, which was, I don't think I've ever seen that before. I mean, getting the bag the next day at the con actually was not an issue at all. They were just handing them out at a table. I thought it was going to be a giant clusterfuck. It wasn't. Still, I mean, people weren't getting the printed schedules the day before the con. And I mean, you can go online easily and get it. But another problem is that the way they lay out the schedule, it's not really printable. They put it on this full color page. And even if you have a color printer like I do, I printed a copy out, and it doesn't really show up very well when you print it out, even on a color printer. And I found it really, really difficult to use. And the actual printed schedule they give out, it's on glossy paper, so you can't use a pencil to circle things that you want to go to. So offering ways to manage your time at the convention, they don't do much in that area. I think that's something that kind of has to be re-explored.
Yeah, I couldn't print it off. I had a black and white printer, and then if I wanted to I had to like download the PDF on my phone and just get a little app and circle what I wanted to see. And I was just like, oh, this is not as convenient as I would like. And even when I looked at the glossy guide, I couldn't even do anything with that. So that was more difficult than I thought it would be. When you just
I don't even know what app you can do that with.
Yeah, I think I downloaded something called Quick Ink, so you can just quickly zoom, circle, highlight what you needed. So that helped. But again, it's sort of that was a bit more difficult. All I wanted was just something easy,
So as I mentioned, I did 4 panels myself. I will say that my experience as a panelist, as always, was really great at this convention. This is something that AR handles really well. As a panelist, you get to pick up your badge at the info booth, so if the line does get out of control, it's not going to disrupt your ability to do a panel if you got one early in the morning or anything like that. They actually maintain 30-minute buffers between every panel and do room clears after each panel, which I'm shocked to hear that they don't do at even other major anime conventions. Sometimes they just let people sit in the room between panels, which is insane, especially when you have people lining up for over an hour to get in a lot of the time. The 30-minute buffer, allows people to, if their panel goes over by a couple of minutes, it's not the end of the world. And they're pretty laid back with that kind of thing. I had a great experience. Their tech support's really good as well. So even if a problem arises, you can usually get it sorted out really quickly. So the panels I did my Devilman panel or Delightfully Devilman Seymour on Friday, and that panel consumed 3 months of my life, and it probably got the lowest turnout of all 4 of the panels I did, of course. But that's okay. It's still, the people who came, really appreciated it, I think. And then I also did my Isao Takahata panel on Saturday, which was much more popular, because of course it had Studio Ghibli in the title, and it technically was unfinished. I was completely winging it for the last little bit of that panel. That only took 3 days of my life, pretty much. So, I guess it just shows that sometimes the stuff you put the least effort into winds up being the most popular. Also, I'm quite glad I didn't have to address the issue that has come up in the last couple of days of Isao Takahata being a impossible to work with tyrant as a director on films, which came out in Toshio Suzuki's book. That just came out 2 days ago from the time we're recording this, I think. I will say, I know Takahata and Miyazaki both have that reputation for being terrifying to work with, and it seems that Isao Takahata was much worse for that than we had previously thought. So it's kind of rough to hear about that, especially after I put together a very positive panel about Takahata before, but I don't think it discredits his films because, he's not the only person who worked on those films. And even if he was a nightmare to work with, I think to throw those films in the trash or anything like that, I think that would be a disservice to all of the people who had to work very hard on those films, apart from Takahata. That's my take on that. But overall with that panel, the main thing I wanted to do was get people interested in Chie the Brat, and I succeeded in that. So I'm happy that worked out well. I also did Is Your Hentai Legal in Canada again, which, it went okay. A lot of people left when they realized it was just me reading porn titles off of CBSA documents. But the people who stuck around really liked it. And I also did my Your Name starring Keanu Reeves again, which is comparing Your Name to the 2006 film The Lake House, which was a huge success. It went over even better than when I did it at SoccerCon a few months ago, and I'm hoping to do that panel at a few other cons in the future as well. And I'm glad I got to do it at AR. And again, good experience as a panelist. I know Jarvis Gray. I convinced him to come back and do panels this year, and he had a really good experience too, so hopefully he'll be back next year as well. And I will say overall, obviously a few problems with the con, but for the last few years I've been saying that I would recommend AR to people who live in or fairly close to the Metro Vancouver area and don't have to travel too far, but I wouldn't recommend it to people who have to fly in or come a great distance. And I think after this year, I think I can finally safely recommend it to people who live outside of this area. I think that, especially if you have friends to hang out with and are interested in checking out the food in Vancouver, which anyone should be, I would say this convention is worth your time. To come down here and check it out.
Oh, definitely. I always say, friends who always wanted to visit Vancouver, and I'm like, well, now there's another reason. Come during the weekend, during a con, and, it's a beautiful, what I like about the downtime is you're literally sitting outside looking over the ocean. It doesn't really get much better than that for con food and con atmosphere.
Yeah, one great thing about the food in that area is that there's this little food court that's right near the convention center, and it seems all of the con attendees just go straight for that food court, and they ignore all of the other fantastic food options, which are within a 10-minute walk from the convention center. I mean, we went to a whole bunch of places that just had no traffic from the con at all, because everyone just beelined straight for that food court all the time. And that's great. I hope it stays that way, because that was a real highlight. Also, there was, unlike last year, there was no smoke from the wildfires blocking the view or obstructing your breathing when you were outside the convention center. But yeah, we're getting all that now, though. It was delayed by a couple weeks this time.
But yeah, for my first time, as well, people say kind of their history with it. It's nice to hear that it's been improving steadily every year. Problems have been addressed. My first time was very positive, so I would definitely go again, and I would definitely recommend it to people even who live nearby or people who won't mind flying out to see the coast. I think the one thing I would like is a few more talent from the anime that's, just beyond voice actors. They do bring very talented voice actors, but it's mostly people, if you like cosplay, if you like voice acting Japanese and English, or it's kind of like that focus, right?
Yeah, they do bring in more Japanese voice actors than I think any other Canadian con does, but it's about time I think they should start branching out, maybe try bringing a mangaka or a director or even like a key animator or someone who actually works in the animation process. Because, it's always great having panels where that's, sort of Q&A with those people, but, you can also have them actually do a live sketch session. Those are some of the best kinds of panels you can do at conventions. And I'd like to see AR try to branch out with something like that in the future. It's good. I would say that there's no massive problems, this time around. So that's a big improvement. Okay, so for the rest of the episode, I think we're just going to kind of talk about what we've been watching, for new shows this season, or continuing shows for that matter. Sarah, what has been on your queue?
So far I've been watching Banana Fish. I really love it. I read like the manga over 10 years ago, so it's just nice seeing a much faster adaptation, and the animation is fluid. I'm a little iffy on the modernization because they kind of made it like a modern graffiti New York. I'm okay with it. I feel like a few things could have been better if they just kept it in the 80s. Everyone's cell phones doesn't seem to work for some reason, but other than that, I'm loving it. Also been enjoying Phantom in the Twilight. Other ones, Planet With, I've been very impressed by that. Harukana Receive, probably the happiest anime. I've been looking forward to every episode every week. So yeah, those are like the main ones I've been very into. And yourself?
Well, Banana Fish I've been keeping up with. I agree with you. I think that the attempt to modernize that story, it doesn't quite work. I think it would have been much more effective if they had kept it set in the 80s. Because I think that would be a much more interesting setting to try and render. Also, I haven't read the original work, so I don't really know how the original comic dealt with, the sexual assault and stuff. I find the anime is it doesn't get rid of it, but it seems to kind of downplay it in a way I find kind of weird. I don't know how that compares to what it was like in the original.
Okay, I didn't get too far. I had the first 5 volumes. It was very expensive back in that day, but wasn't it really explicit? It wasn't they didn't put into, it wasn't too much detail. They didn't it. You know how they kind of get that weird uncomfortable vibes where you feel like they're kind of fetishizing it, but this, they're very respectful to the material. There's a lot of child abuse. They only show just a pan, they they kind of let you know, but they don't get into really big detail. The mangas like that, they cut out a few details, a couple of very racist jokes that I'm glad that did not make it into the anime. So
that's good.
Yeah, so they, I guess you could always do better, but they tweaked out certain things that definitely would not fly in today's audience. So I feel like they're pretty faithful to the material from what I remember, but a little trimming here and there. Definitely faster paced too. I think blowing through a volume an episode or two, but no, I'm really enjoying it.
Yeah, I think it's 19 volumes, this being crunched down to 22 episodes or something like that. If it's keeping a steady clip right now, so I'm enjoying it a lot. It's not, I guess as a crime story, it's not maybe the most gripping thing I've seen, but it's a very entertaining show. I've been liking it a lot. I think with the stuff you've been watching, I've also been following Planet With. Now, with Planet With, just to be clear, I'm assuming that everyone who's watching Planet With is at least a little bit confused about what's going on in that show, right? It's not just me?
No, it's not just you, don't worry.
I don't know. I kind of like the idea of what's going on, but it's kind of hard to put all the pieces together at the halfway point right now. I think we kind of have to see it all play out. But, despite the fact that it doesn't always make a lot of sense, I think it certainly maintains your interest. I'll follow that one through to the end for sure.
Oh, definitely. I think what I like about it, by the time you pick up the foreshadowing or you think there might be a twist, it's aha, I see what you're doing. They already put it, they already drop it, and they're on to the plot twist, and it's a enjoyable ride. And yeah, I don't know where it will go, but I'm very excited to see what it'll do next.
Yeah, I know I did not really like the first episode that much because it kind of threw you into the thick of things in a way that I found aggravatingly confusing. The following episodes kind of stepped it back a little bit, but I'm liking it a lot. I'll keep following that one. Did you wind up following Hanebado?
I did. I kind of dropped it halfway. I feel I might pick it up again. It's like I really loved the first episode. I wanted to keep liking it. After a while, the characters kind of dragged you down with their like kind of melodrama, and it's more not only that, but the other characters kind of got fed into it and they enabled it so everyone couldn't escape it.
Too much melodrama? You can't be serious.
I know, and usually I love that stuff. I mean, if you watch Glass Mask, that's like probably my kind of melodrama, but I think it's more like I wasn't really attached to the characters yet. So when they started adding like all this like mother subplot, I just couldn't really get invested as much. There's some really strong points though. The animation's fluid. I do love like the talent versus like, working hard and all that. But, yeah, I might pick it up a little bit. I might just see how the reaction is at the end. But yeah, some people might have found it too intense. Other people really loved it. So I think it's just more like if you really love angry girls, it's great.
I don't know if have you looked at any of the manga? I think it's really fascinating how the art style in that series has evolved over the time that it's been running. I think like 15 volumes or something. It starts out as like a really kind of fan servicey shonen girls sport anime, and then it evolves into this really a much more intense, aggressive art style than you would expect based on the beginning. You can actually just see it when you look at the covers for the manga. The art style changes drastically from the beginning to where we are now, and I think from what the little I've seen of the show, I think it's kind of trying to integrate all of those elements into the series right from the beginning. Maybe that's why it's coming off a little awkward with the way that they're implementing. Have you been keeping up with Asobi Asobase?
Sadly, no. I've been hearing good things about it though. I thought the season overall was light, but now people giving more than the 3-episode chance, and they're kind of like warming up to certain shows.
Asobi Asobase is, I swear, it is some of the funniest shit I have seen in quite a long time. So I don't know if you haven't heard of this show, you may have seen on social media people posting pictures of these girls with these sort of grotesque demonic reaction faces. When I saw images of those images after the first episode aired, I knew I had to check it out. I was trying to figure out what show these images were from. And I heard it was Asobi Asobase, and I looked it up on Crunchyroll, and like the key image they had on there was just this like kind of sweet, kind of soft image of these 3 girls laying back together, and I'm like, no, this is a mistake. Those images I saw were not from this show. And I started watching it. I saw the opening, and it's just cheerful, cute girls singing along with a saccharine song, and I'm like, no, this is wrong. I'm watching the wrong thing. And you get a few minutes into the episode, and then those horrifying reaction faces start, and then you start to understand what this show's true nature is, and it is glorious. The characters have a very Seinfeld kind of dynamic between them. Like, they're not friends, quote unquote, but they all sort of benefit from being around each other, so they kind of tolerate each other to a degree. But they will gladly sell each other out at an opportune moment. So a lot of the sketches in it are kind of constructed like that. After a few episodes, they also introduced this very awkward female teacher character who's having typical woman in her 30s issues that come up in the series. And it would, since the creator of Asobi Asobase is a woman who I presume is in her 20s and 30s, that teacher probably has a lot of depressing self-projection going into her, which adds another dimension to the show. And like some of the stuff that comes up after just a few episodes of Asobi Asobase is just so unbelievably surreal and crazy. You won't see it coming. I highly recommend this show. In episode 5, there is one segment that's a little kind of transphobic. It's not too bad, but yeah, I was a little put off by that one bit, but it's only one segment so far. Hopefully it's not going to be a recurring thing in the show. But yeah, I still recommend it wholeheartedly. It is delightfully twisted. Did you watch any of Happy Sugar Life?
I've heard things about it.
Yeah. That one is pretty fucked up. Definitely not for everyone, but I will say after I watched the first episode, I was intrigued enough to watch the second. I don't think I'm going to watch any more of it. I think I get the idea. Yeah, she seems to have killed her family or something, and is hiding it behind a sugary disposition. And she seems to be in love with this little girl that she's apparently kidnapped. And every person in her life is some kind of weirdo, criminal, or something like that. Yeah, I don't know if I can recommend that one. If you like things that are like that have like a sinister atmosphere hiding behind the surface, then I mean I could probably recommend in that case, but not really for everyone. Review Starlight, I know, has been probably one of the biggest hits of the season so far, at least for people I interact with.
After marathoning Revolutionary Girl Utena, like jumping right into this, very familiar vibes. I'm loving it.
Well, it is directed by the director is Tomohiro Furukawa, and he's collaborated with Ikuhara on Penguin Drum and Yurikuma Arashi, and obviously I'm not sure exactly what his roles were in that show. I think he did a variety of things, but apparently he's considered to be a collaborator with Ikuhara, and that influence really shows on this series. Of course, it's not an idol show, because it's focusing on a bunch of girls who are in a theater troupe, but it is basically an idol show. Like, if you were familiar with idol shows, it will definitely help you keep track of all these girls that they just kind of throw at you at the beginning, which is it's a very idol show kind of trait. I wouldn't go as far as to say it like subverts that kind of series, but I would say it kind of takes that model and does something more with it. It has really bizarre penguin drum-like imagery, especially once you get to the halfway point of the first episode. They kind of throw that at you. It uses that reused animation for the, I don't want to call them transformation sequences, but like the preparation sequences for their secret auditions that take place deep in the basement and are observed by a giraffe who's... I'm only 3 episodes in. I guess we don't really know do we still not know what the giraffe is up to exactly?
No, but I feel like his catchphrase is like, I understand. So we'll see. We'll see what goes with that. But no, I think so far episode 5 is probably one of the most strongest of it. But yeah, it's definitely more, if you've seen the first 3, like it's definitely just kind of progressing with that. There's been more, episode 4 had a nice little, breather between, Karen and, oh my god, the name escapes me.
I know there's like Banana Girl and
Banana Nice.
Purple-haired glasses girl and star hair clip girl.
Oh, I know. Everyone's been kind of calling the Banana Girl just like Banana Nice. She's a mothery character. I like her a lot. Okay, so episode 4 had a nice focus between Karen and Hikari. The childhood friend who returned from England is kind of like that mysterious, quiet, like cold, distant girl now. So they had like a nice little heart-to-heart talk there. So I feel like there's going to be a new direction with that as they try to both be top stars. They're going to try and beat the system where it can only be like the one top star. See how that goes with that. What I really liked about the show so far is like very competitive. Like the girls are going to compete and be top stars, but they're still friends. They still support each other. They work hard. There's none of like girls resorting to pettiness. One girl's kind of manipulative. You'll see later. But so far it feels like, you could still, be best friends and still try to be that shining star. So I really liked, the interactions between all the girls. It's a lot of girls, but after a while you start to, warm up to them.
This is definitely a recommendation I can make. I'm enjoying this show a lot. It is on High Dive, so you have to subscribe to High Dive to watch it, but High Dive's not so bad. I've been using it for a while now. They finally have Chromecast. It is certainly better than any streaming service that Funimation has ever tried to put out. And High Dive's pretty cheap right now too, and you get like dubs and stuff on it. So
oh, definitely. Yeah.
I would say Review Starlight is worth checking out High Dive for.
And Legend of the Galactic Heroes.
Oh yes. Do they have the whole thing on there yet?
They have the whole OVA. I'm nothing about the movies yet. I want to say like one day, but no, the whole like OVA, 110 episodes are on it.
It's a much better way to watch that than buying the box set that is coming out soon. Which did they? I know it was limited to like 2,000. Did any word on if they managed to get that many pre-orders for Sentai's Legend of the Galactic Heroes box set?
The last time I seen, I know there's been 800 placed. I'm not sure how it's been since. I wouldn't be like. It's very hard to tell with that price. that price. I think the Otakon, like they did mention if there was like a demand, they might consider a regular box set. So fingers crossed.
The whole thing with Legend of Galactic Heroes has always been that the company that has it in Japan refused to license it in the West unless it was sold. The condition was it could only be sold as one complete DVD box set that was $2,000. It seems that they've now dropped that price considerably, but they still expect it to be sold as just one complete set for a very high price. But thankfully we have the streaming option now, which has kind of made that easier to swallow, I guess you could say.
Mm.
But yeah, we'll see where that goes. I hope they keep it on High Dive and don't at some point force people to buy the box set to see it. But it's awesome that it's there, for sure. Speaking of older stuff, one thing that's, I guess, has kind of forced me to fall behind in a lot of the shows I've been watching, because I've been trying to get caught up I've been trying to finish Space Adventure Cobra on Crunchyroll before that gets pulled at the end of August, because Right Stuff has lost the rights to it and apparently will not be renewing it. That show's pretty awesome. I would say at least, watch it for a few episodes for sure. There's a great aesthetic, great sort of classic heavy metal kind of aesthetic to that show that I think is better than heavy metal. The movie that Discotek put out, I think it does really capture everything you need from the series, but you get a little more of it when you watch the TV series. It's not as high budget as that movie was, but it looks phenomenal for a TV show from 1982. It kind of blows me away to think that, when we were getting He-Man on TV here, kids in Japan were getting Cobra, which is like such a wild contrast. Yeah, it's a cool thing to check out for sure. I hope I can finish it in time before the August 30th deadline. And I've been keeping up with Lupin the Third Part 5 as well, which has just been phenomenal. All that new Lupin stuff is just great. Go watch it if you haven't. Okay, well that's pretty much all I've got. Sarah, anything else you wanted to add before we wrap up?
Phantom in the Twilight has actually been more impressive than I thought. It's kind of like shoujo setting based on an Tommy game. I've been really liking it so far. The world building's been very solid, thought out. The guys are actually decent guys.
Wow, really?
I know, yeah. I was just like, oh wow, these guys are actually pretty good. Even though there's like a werewolf, a vampire, they're all very they respect the heroine. I really like her too. She's very active. She's tried to save her very best friend as they're holding hands, doing each other's hair. Very, very good friend. She's just trying to save her best friend who's been kidnapped. But I feel like even the damsel in distress is going to start doing stuff. So overall, Phantom in the Twilight it's actually pretty good. I've been very happy with that one.
All right, well, Sarah, I think we're going to wrap up now. Where can people find you online?
You can find me on Twitter. My user handle is KittyNT. I think right now, I think I just have a banana fish icon in my username. But no, I like interacting with the Twitter friends. Feel free to follow me, and I'll follow you back.
And thanks for tuning in to Zonan Canada. You can reach me on Twitter @JBetteridge or email zonancanada@gmail.com. Please subscribe to the show on iTunes, Google Play Music, or your podcast app of choice. And also, if you know anyone who might like the show, please recommend it to them. See you again.